They say when you die, you see a tunnel followed by this bright light and then this feeling of blissful peace. At least, that's what most near-death experiences tell you. But what nobody talks about are the ones who came back and found there was no peace, but something much worse. Tonight, I'm sharing 3 disturbing near-death experiences that may challenge what you think happens after death. From a woman who was tortured by malevolent beings, to a devout Christian who didn't see heaven, to an alcoholic who became imprisoned in a pitch-black void. For those who stick to the end, I've got a bonus story for you, the most unexpected story that fascinated me the most. This is W101.3. I'm Hans, and welcome to my Hollow. We dive into true stories that sit at the edges of what we can understand and try to get disturbingly close to the truth. So if that sounds like your kind of thing, subscribe because we air every Thursday. Okay, let's get right into it. Kim weighed 92 pounds. She'd been struggling for a long time. She doesn't say with what exactly, only that when her friend gave her 3 sleeping pills and suggested she take all 3 of them at once, she did it. But those pills had been prescribed for someone weighing nearly 300 pounds, a dose that was deadly for Kim. Not long after, she lost consciousness, and when her boyfriend found her on the kitchen floor, she wasn't breathing. She was taken to the hospital, resuscitated, but still unconscious. She was in a coma for the next 4 days. But during that time, what Kim was experiencing elsewhere was something no one could expect. It was pitch black. Not black like a dark room with closed curtains, black like light literally never existed. She describes it as all-encompassing and eerie. That's when she noticed a smell, which she described as rancid at best. To me, guys, this basically means the smell had no human equivalent. It was just that disgusting. But the smell became the least of her worries when she heard something big and angry, kind of like angry devils or angry animals, making noises that were neither growls nor screams. The animals, no, more like beasts, came from multiple directions. From the black distance, entities she could only understand were coming for her. Then there were the claws, then the teeth. And pretty soon the beasts began to literally tear her apart. In complete darkness, by things she could not see, with full physical sensation. The pain was, by her account, unimaginable, and she means it so literally. There was nothing in the ordinary human world that could equate to what she was feeling. And the worst part is, here, guys, she couldn't just pass out again. She could not die. She could not scream. And whatever protection unconsciousness would provide, the body's mechanism for shutting off when sensation exceeds what someone can process, that mechanism did not exist where she was. She stayed fully present and aware as she was, quote, ripped apart for 4 days. When she finally woke up in the hospital, she did not come around slowly or peacefully. She sat up and immediately started dragging herself toward the nearest thing she could reach. She found a carton of milk and drank from it directly, forcing herself to vomit. She did multiple times, as if trying to expel something the darkness had left inside her. She passed out again on the floor, where her boyfriend found her once more. She didn't tell anyone what had happened for years, because those 4 days, in whatever place that was, she said, felt more real than anything in this world she came back to. When she finally did talk, she said, quote, saying that I think I went to hell is hard, especially for an atheist, end quote. But she doesn't ever resolve her beliefs. She never adopts a system or belief that accommodates for what she experienced. To this day, she carries her memory of it, somehow placing it next to her disbelief of hell. What makes Kim's hellish near-death experience uniquely difficult to study and dismiss is the rarity of it. I mean, let's trace back a bit, because her experience actually fits into one of 3 main types of distressing near-death experiences. The first type is called the inverted experience, a seemingly normal near-death experience that the person, for some reason, interprets as terrifying. The second is the void experience. There's no tunnel, no light or beings. It's just a person's own consciousness stripped of everything and suspended in this absolute darkness outside of time. And then the third type is called the hellish experience, which is what Kim went through. And it happens to be the rarest type. It's explicit, it's high sensory, and filled with torturous pain, typically. And this type of account is the hardest to explain. For one, Kim said she had no body, which probably means no senses or nerve endings. Yet she was still able to smell rancid flesh and feel horrendous pain of her limbs torn apart. Kim is an atheist, so she most likely thought of it as her own hallucinations drawn from her own fears. Yet everything she described somehow matches other accounts submitted by believers from entirely different cultures, which nobody has a clean explanation as to why. Now, Kim's experience was saturated with sensation, but the woman in our second story was stripped of feeling any sensation. This woman, who we'll call Eve, was a deeply religious Christian. All her life, she had faith and therefore a framework for how death would be like. Like if anything was going to happen on the other side, she already had a good idea of how it would look. But all that changed on the evening of September 3rd, 2014, when she was driving back to a friend's house after dinner. It started as a completely ordinary evening, sitting on the porch, and at some point Eve walked to the back porch to smoke a cigarette. Her friends watched her step to the edge of the top stair. Then she stopped after the first step. Her eyes went glassy, and right there she started seizing. She fell forward off the top of the 7-foot staircase and landed directly on her face. She broke her nose, she fractured her cheekbone, she knocked out 2 teeth even. But the worst part was she suffered a traumatic brain injury. By the time her friends reached her at the bottom of the stairs, she had stopped breathing. They performed CPR. It brought her back. Then she stopped breathing again. CPR again. Then her heart stopped completely, and that's when nurses defibrillated her. This went on for 2 days in the hospital, but during all those intervals between her heart stopping and being restarted, Eve's soul was somewhere else. She found herself inside a huge black square space, infinite but bounded. She understood it to be a container without finding its walls. Inside, there were small white dots distributed like stars. Though she says they didn't feel like stars, she could not see her own body, she had no physical form, she was just awareness, to a point of consciousness hovering in the dark. That's when this banging started. Boom, boom. It began far away, loud, rhythmic. It was a percussive sound, not a knock or a heartbeat, but something kind of heavier. And with every strike, it moved closer. Boom, boom, boom. The sound was, by her description, ear-splitting. She felt she might lose her hearing from it, except she had no ears to lose. And between every boom, every strike, there was a voice, and it was low and authoritative. It said, quote, "This is how it began and how it will end." The same sentence, again and again, synchronized with the booms. And then the space shifted. Suddenly, the black square gave way to something else. Still dark and formless, but now populated with what she could only describe as demons and monsters. They moved at a blurring speed, as if they were edited, and as if they occupied the space with different physics. She could feel them trying to now pull her apart. Sounding a little bit like Kim's, right? But she was thinking to herself, she had no body, and this pain shouldn't be possible. But somehow it was real and she felt it. In the upper right corner of wherever she was very specific about this, by the way, the upper right corner, she could make out a figure, a male figure perhaps. It screamed her name and reached out its hand. She reached back. Then she heard voices, human voices, from somewhere distant, maybe from Earth, asking, "Is she breathing? Is she breathing?" Then she was suddenly pulled back, not all the way, but back into the black square. The beings were suddenly gone. The white dots were gone. It was now just pure darkness once again, banging, and then that one voice coming back. "This is how it began, and this is how it will end." After one last boom, the man let out a final sentence. "You're done." To Eve, those words meant she was dead, and she was there unable to respond to it until she woke up in the back of a hospital with no memory of who she was, or where she was, or even what her name was. She vomited on the doctor and she was strapped to the gurney. She woke up again in the hospital 2 days later with her mother and brother in her room, and for several minutes she didn't recognize any of them. Memory came back slowly, eventually, in fragments. People filled her in. She pieced together that evening, the porch, the stairs. None of it felt like it happened to her. But she remembers that big, dark space, the banging, the booms, the voice, the figure with the outstretched hand. She has never forgotten those. She submitted this account because she felt she was supposed to, because there was one last thing the darkness, the voice submitted to her before she left that dark void. At the very end, just before the darkness closed, the voice gave her a final instruction. Tell all. This is how it begins and how it ends. In front of her, she sees a war. She doesn't know what or where the war was, but all she could see was devastation and torment and pain. She doesn't know what she really saw, she doesn't know what it means, but she wanted to carry on the message to tell everyone how this ends. This inverted near-death experience is something that sounds similar to what Kim went through, but there's a big difference. For one, Kim knew nothing about what death might look like. She was not religious and had no framework. So when she arrived, it was completely new to her. But Eve was the opposite. She had a framework. She had her love of Christ in with her. But when she arrived there, it was the realization that none of it was what she had been promised. If you take Eve's account seriously, whatever is on the other side isn't organized around what you've been told to expect. Your belief system, however carefully constructed, may not simply apply. At least this is what Eve would say, because Eve had that realization when she arrived in that darkness. Now, Eve's experience was filled with a presence and a voice in a space that was vastly dark. But what's worse than a dark space full of beings that may want to hurt you? Perhaps a dark space with absolutely nothing at all. Fawn was on the floor. She had been drinking heavily, and she was way past the point where her body was gonna manage to bring it back on its own. She was barely conscious, and somewhere in that state she was in, she became aware of her own very existence. Her brain was still running, yes, but she had lost the ability to send the signal to her body to make her take the next breath. Instruction just wasn't connecting, and she was conscious enough to know that she was dying. But what happens next is not something that happened to her. It was her choice, because she actually decided to let go, to die. In a quiet, deliberate decision, she stopped trying to hold on and let death take her. There was a brief flash of what she calls colored static, like a television losing its signal, followed by a strange vibration, and then immediately, the void. No tunnel, no beings, no light, no sound, no sensation. I'm talking about she was an absolute black, without a body and without a direction, any which way to tell her if she was up or down. But here's the thing, her memories were still there. She could access them. She could see snapshots or memories of her life, her loved ones, where she'd been, who she'd known. That real emotion of what makes her personality, of who she was still with her. But not for long, because as the time ticked on and on, she had to let every attachment and memory go, fade one by one. Through grueling isolation and loneliness, she could only watch as her identity slowly flaked away. And she was aware the whole time. That's the detail here. She wasn't unconscious. She lost every piece of her as time went on. At many points, she wondered, how long have I been here? She estimated approximately 1,000 years. But in real time, back at Earth, she was on the floor for only several hours. When she finally woke up, she felt her consciousness moving at what she described as light speed, slamming back into her body from wherever it had been. She bolted upright, and her first reaction was astonishment. She couldn't believe she was alive. She couldn't believe she left that void, that she was there for thousands of years. She spent several minutes just asking, what happened to me? Where was I? What was that? Am I supposed to understand something from that? To this day, neither her nor us have an answer, and there may never be an answer for her. For me, what stuck out the most in her report is that she described herself as a former atheist. After that experience, she came back with an inability to dismiss the question. What keeps me fascinated with the void near-death experience as a category is that it's not disturbing or frightening the way Kim's or Eve's experience was. It's much more philosophical. Identity requires contrast. I know who I am because I am different from this table that I'm sitting at, from you watching the screen right now, and from the air that's in this room. There has to be something that's different from us for us to form our own identity. The void, though, that Fawn was in removes all of that. And without a contrast, your identity basically dissolves. And I don't think how existential people realize that can become. 3 different kinds of disturbing experiences. Claws in the dark, we have a voice in a dark void, and then we just have absolute nothing. Now I want to tell you our final 4th bonus case, and I think it's the most unsettling in detail in the entire body of research that I've done. Kathleen was given a soft drink, which she drank immediately. But what she didn't know was that drink had been laced with strychnine, a convulsant poison that at sufficient doses causes respiratory failure and death. Kathleen received a sufficient dose, and she died. The first thing she became aware of was the sound. It was not darkness or a tunnel, it was an ocean of voices in darkness, as she said, layered, multiplying. They were all weeping and wailing, climbing in volume as she became more aware of them. She said there were millions of weeping voices, all of them in the same place, all of them in what she could only understand as agony. The screams were unbearable, but it kept growing, and it got worse the longer she was there. She also had no body, she had no mechanism for escape. She couldn't even cover her ears if she wanted to. But as her endurance reached its limit, she could not bear it anymore with the pain and suffering that she felt entering her body. At that extreme moment, she couldn't take it anymore. She used all of her energy to scream a single word: God. She heard her own voice echo through the layers of darkness and the screams. She thought to herself, God, help me, God, help me. And that's when a hand came down. She's very specific about this, not a metaphor of some kind of abstract hand. It was a big, gigantic hand that came rushing down from the sky. It reached into wherever she was and moved underneath her, cupping its hands and lifting her up and out of the dark. The wailing faded, the volume dropped. There, arriving somewhere else, she saw other people. She knew them, not from her life now, but in the way you know something has always been true. They told her not to worry about her body, her former self. She was there with them, and that's all that mattered. They brought her to a man who stood at some distance. She was placed in his presence. She couldn't hear his voice because he actually spoke to her in her head. She said this was an otherworldly experience. Without the lag of language, she understood everything he communicated the moment it was communicated. She asked the man, "Why have I been sent to a good place rather than left in the abyss?" And he replied, quote, "I have created you to be exactly who you are." End quote. She told him she hadn't done anything to deserve the good place, and he simply responded with, quote, "I know everything about you, and I love you." She asked, "Why does evil exist?" And he responds, "Because there is good." She then decides to ask something Christianity doesn't believe in. Do humans live once or many times? The man took her to an entrance of a hallway, and in this hallway contained millions of doors, each one she understood to be one life, one choice, and an exit from the good place back to the world. The man said, "You can choose any door and be born again. Some people go back again and again, even though I don't want them to. I want them to stay, but their life is theirs. Why do you want to leave?" Kathleen didn't answer. "How do you feel about being dead?" Kathleen simply replied, "It doesn't bother me much." In fact, her only regret was that she hadn't been able to say goodbye to her parents. But unbeknownst to her, she was making a choice, a deliberate moment of decision, because the moment she said that, she was back in her body. She had chosen a door. She had chosen the life she'd come from with the parents she hadn't said goodbye to. When she woke up, she discovered what she'd given up. The only feeling that she felt at that moment was depressed. But then immediately she acknowledged that, quote, "I was back again in this world and I chose the life I mapped out for myself," end quote. She ended up getting sober and stopped using hard drugs. She built a career helping other people to do the same. Today, she's been sober from hard drugs for 18 years. She built a career helping other people do the same. By every external measure, a person who'd come back and made something of what she'd seen. But to this day, she never stops being quietly sad about the door she didn't take. I'm not sure if Kathleen's experience counts as distressing. Yes, there were elements of hellish, and void near-death experiences in there, but at the end of the day, she came to something that was beautiful and serene, something she kind of wishes she stayed in. If she hadn't said her one regret was not saying goodbye to her parents, maybe she would have still been there. The most beautiful place she had ever been. She returned to Earth for that. Does she hold regrets today? Maybe, but I'm not really sure. But maybe there was more the man saw in her. Maybe he knew that she was destined for more, like helping other people who were victims of hard drugs. Make of this what you will. Across every documented distressing near-death experience, every single one, the person came back changed, and that change almost always was permanent. As to what they tell us, what's waiting after death, that's where I want to hear from you guys. What do you think is waiting on the other side? That's it for this broadcast. I hope you enjoyed it like I did. And until next time, have a horrible sleep.